The secret that changed everything. I thought marrying David was a fresh start until I uncovered my stepson's dark secret. At first, it was just a feeling. Then came the lies, the blackmail, and the terrifying truth that changed everything. And the worst part? I never saw it coming. I never thought a single moment could alter my entire reality. But that was before I discovered the truth about my stepson. I married David when I was 35. I wasn't expecting to fall in love again, not after the way my first marriage ended. But David was different. He was kind, stable, and patient in ways I had never known before. He made me feel safe. There was just one complication: his 18-year-old son, Ethan. Ethan had always been distant, keeping his emotions locked away like a secret he never intended to share. I didn't take it personally at first. After all, I was just his father's new wife. I knew it would take time to build trust. But something about Ethan always felt off. It wasn't just the way he avoided eye contact, or how he always seemed to be watching me from a distance. It was the feeling that he was hiding something dark and unsettling. And one night, I found out exactly what it was. The night that started it all. It was late. David was out of town for work, and I was alone in the house. The silence felt heavier than usual, pressing against my skin like a warning I couldn't understand. I was just about to go to bed when I heard something. A noise, a faint rustling sound coming from down the hall. I froze, my pulse quickening. I wasn't sure why, but a strange sense of dread coiled in my stomach. I told myself it was nothing, maybe just the wind against the window or the house settling. But then I heard it again, and this time, I knew someone was there. Slowly, I stepped out into the hallway. The air was thick with tension, and for a moment, I thought I was just being paranoid. But then, a shadow moved near Ethan's door. I barely had time to react before the door creaked open, revealing a sight that sent a shiver down my spine. Ethan stood there, half hidden in the darkness, his eyes locked onto mine. But it wasn't the fact that he was awake that unsettled me. It was what he was holding in his hands. A small, worn journal, one I recognized immediately. Because it was mine. The journal of secrets. I felt my breath catch. "Ethan, why do you have that?" My voice came out softer than I intended, laced with an unease I couldn't hide. He didn't answer right away. He just stood there, gripping the journal tightly, his knuckles white from the pressure. "I just wanted to understand you," he finally murmured. I swallowed hard. Understand me? What did that even mean? Slowly, I reached for the journal, but Ethan didn't let go. His fingers tightened around it, as if it held something far more valuable than my own thoughts and memories. "Did you read it?" I asked, my heart pounding. Silence. And then he smiled. A slow, knowing, unnerving smile. I know everything now. A chill ran through me. Everything? My mind raced back to the pages I had filled over the years, the private confessions, the memories I had never spoken out loud, the things about my past, my fears, my mistakes. And then, the most horrifying thought of all. Did he find out about what I did before I met his father? Did he know my deepest, darkest secret? I felt the room closing in around me. Ethan knew something. And the look in his eyes told me one thing for certain. He wasn't going to forget it. Ethan's words echoed in my mind. "I know everything now." The way he had smiled when he said it, like he had uncovered a hidden truth I never wanted revealed, made my blood run cold. I wanted to believe it was just my imagination, that I was overreacting. But deep down, I knew better. Ethan had read my journal. And if he had read all of it, then he knew my darkest secret. The past I tried to bury. Years before I met David, before I became Ethan's stepmother, I was a different person. There were things I had done, things I had never told anyone, not even my husband, because if he knew, he would never look at me the same way again. I had rewritten my life when I met David. I became the perfect wife, the loving stepmother, the woman who had nothing to hide. But Ethan had found the cracks in my story. And now I had no idea what he planned to do with what he knew, a shift in power. The next morning, the house felt different. Ethan sat across from me at the breakfast table, sipping his coffee like nothing had happened. But there was something in his eyes, something almost playful. "Did you sleep well?" he asked casually, his voice smooth. I hesitated. "Fine. That's good." He set his cup down, tilting his head. "You seemed a little shaken last night." I forced myself to stay calm. "You went through my private things, Ethan. That would shake anyone." He smirked. "I was just curious." I didn't believe him, not for a second. He wasn't just curious. He was testing me, seeing how far he could push before I broke. And I had a terrifying feeling that this was only the beginning. The threat beneath the surface. Over the next few days, Ethan's behavior changed. He wasn't distant anymore. In fact, he was always there. If I was in the kitchen, he'd sit at the counter watching me. If I was reading in the living room, he'd take the seat across from me, flipping through his phone, stealing glances. And then there were the subtle remarks. "People aren't always who they pretend to be, huh?" he mused one evening, stretching out on the couch. "Sometimes they have secrets." "What are you trying to say?" I asked carefully. "Nothing." His smirk returned. "Just thinking out loud." But it wasn't nothing. It was a warning. A message that only I could understand. He wanted me to know that he was in control now, that he knew what I was hiding, and that he wasn't going to let me forget it. The lie that could ruin everything. One evening, as I was setting the table for dinner, Ethan leaned against the counter, watching me with an almost lazy amusement. "I was thinking," he began. I tensed. "About what?" "About telling Dad." My hands froze over the plates. "Telling him what?" I asked, forcing a neutral tone. Ethan smiled, slow and deliberate. "Everything." A chill ran through me. "You wouldn't." He shrugged. "Wouldn't I?" I clenched my fists, my heart pounding. If he told David what he knew, if he revealed my past, my lies, my secret, everything I had built would fall apart. I couldn't let that happen. "Ethan, please." "Relax," he interrupted, laughing softly. "I haven't told him yet." Yet. That single word hung in the air like a threat. I swallowed hard. Ethan had me trapped, and I had no idea what he was going to do next. I had lost control. Ethan knew it, and he was enjoying every second of it. The threat that never left. For days, I lived in constant fear, my mind consumed with one question. What is he going to do? Ethan didn't have to say much anymore. He just watched me. He lingered in doorways, his gaze steady and knowing. He hovered nearby whenever I spoke to David, as if daring me to slip up. And the worst part? He was acting completely normal around his father, laughing at his jokes, asking about his day, pretending to be the same polite, quiet stepson I had known before. But I could see through it now. I could see the game he was playing, and I was losing the first move. One evening, while David was still at work, I found Ethan in the living room, lazily flipping through a book. I hesitated before speaking. "What do you want?" He didn't look up. "What do you mean?" I clenched my fists. "You're holding something over me, I know that. So let's stop playing games. What do you want?" Ethan smiled to himself, closing the book. Then he stood up. Too close, too calm. I haven't decided yet. Ethan, relax, he murmured, voice smooth as silk. I'll let you know when I do. And just like that, he walked past me, his shoulder grazing mine as he disappeared down the hall. I stood there, paralyzed. He was making me wait, and that was somehow worse than if he had just come out and said it. The price of silence. The next morning, I was drinking my coffee when Ethan slid into the chair across from me. I thought of something, he said casually, stirring sugar into his tea. I stiffened, and he tapped his spoon against the edge of the cup, watching me with calculated amusement. I won't tell Dad, if you do something for me. My stomach twisted. What kind of something? He leaned back, stretching like he had all the time in the world. I need money. I exhaled, the tension in my shoulders loosening slightly. Money? That was manageable. How much? Not much. A couple thousand. I stilled. A couple thousand? That's not a small amount, Ethan. He tilted his head, eyes gleaming. Compared to losing everything? It's nothing. I swallowed hard. He was right. If David found out the truth about my past, my marriage would be over. Would Ethan really tell him? Looking at his expression, cold, detached, calculating, I knew the answer. Yes, he would. Fine, I whispered. Ethan grinned. Good choice. A dangerous cycle. I transferred the money the same day, and for a little while things went back to normal. Ethan stopped making comments. He didn't hover as much. I let myself breathe again. But then, 2 weeks later, another message from Ethan appeared on my phone. Need another favor. I stared at the screen, my hands trembling. Of course it wasn't over. I should have known, because when you make a deal with the devil, they don't stop taking. They just keep coming back for more. The moment I saw the message on my phone, my stomach twisted. Need another favor. I wanted to ignore it. I wanted to pretend it wasn't happening. But I couldn't, because I knew Ethan wasn't asking, he was telling. And if I refused, I would lose everything. A demand I couldn't refuse. I waited until David left for work before confronting Ethan. He was in the kitchen, completely at ease, pouring himself a cup of coffee like he had nothing to worry about. Another favor? My voice was cold, sharp. I already gave you money. Ethan took a slow sip, then smiled. And you did such a good job. I thought we could do it again. My fists clenched. How much this time? He set the mug down and leaned against the counter. No money this time, I frowned. Then what? Ethan tilted his head slightly, as if amused by my confusion. Then, with a lazy grin, he said, I want you to lie to Dad for me. My heart skipped a beat. Lie about what? Something simple. He shrugged. Tell him I've been doing great in school, that I've been studying every night, working hard, staying out of trouble. I frowned. You haven't been? Ethan laughed. What do you think? I swallowed hard. If you're failing, your father deserves to know. His expression darkened. Do you think you're in a position to tell me what I deserve? My throat went dry. If I don't? Ethan smirked. Then maybe Dad finally finds out what you've been hiding. I gripped the counter, my mind racing. If David found out. If he knew who I really was before I met him. I couldn't let that happen. Fine. My voice came out barely above a whisper. Ethan leaned in closer, his breath warm against my ear. Good girl. I shivered. The lies begin. That night, When David asked about Ethan's progress in school, I forced myself to smile. "He's doing great," I said. "Studying hard, focused, really trying." David beamed. "That's amazing! I knew he had it in him." Ethan sat across from me at the dinner table, watching me lie for him, a secret satisfaction in his eyes. And just like that, I had become part of his game. The spiral. The lies didn't stop there. They multiplied. One lie turned into two. Two turned into 10. Mom says I was home all evening. Mom says I've been responsible. Mom says I never skipped class. David believed every word. And the worst part? I was letting it happen because Ethan owned me now. And every time I thought it was over, another message would appear. I need something else. The breaking point. One night, Ethan pushed me too far. I was in the bedroom, trying to breathe, trying to think, when my phone buzzed. "Come to my room. Now." I stared at the message, my pulse pounding. I didn't want to go. I wanted to run, but I couldn't. Not when he had me trapped like this. I stepped into Ethan's room, my hands shaking. He was sitting on the edge of the bed, his phone in his hand, scrolling through something. "What do you want now?" My voice was barely steady. He glanced up, then turned his phone toward me, and my blood ran cold. It was a photo of me, taken when I wasn't looking, at the grocery store, at the gym, walking to my car. Ethan had been watching me for who knows how long. I stumbled back, my breath catching in my throat. Why do you have these?" Ethan's smile was slow. "Because I like knowing things." Terror washed over me. This wasn't just blackmail anymore. This was something worse, something darker, and for the first time, I realized I wasn't just trapped in a lie. I was trapped with him. I couldn't breathe. The photos on Ethan's phone, images of me taken without my knowledge, sent a wave of terror through my body. This wasn't just about blackmail anymore. This was obsession. I had spent months thinking Ethan wanted control, that he was playing a game with me, using my past as a weapon. But now, as he sat there, watching me fall apart, I realized something much worse. Ethan wasn't just blackmailing me, he was watching me, and I had no idea why. The power shift. "Why do you have these?" My voice was barely a whisper. Ethan tilted his head as if he were amused by my fear. "Relax," he said. "I just like keeping an eye on you." Keeping an eye on me. I swallowed hard. "That's not normal, Ethan." "Neither is lying to your husband every day," he shot back smoothly. I clenched my fists. I never hurt anyone. Ethan's smirk deepened. "Neither have I." But that was a lie. Because this sick, twisted thing he was doing was a type of violence I had never experienced before. The kind that didn't leave bruises but left scars all the same. The first warning. That night, I locked my bedroom door for the first time. It wasn't enough to make me feel safe, but it was something. I barely slept. I kept hearing things, small creaks in the floorboards, the sound of something shifting just outside my room. I told myself it was just my imagination, but deep down I knew better. And the next morning, when I opened my door, I saw it. A single piece of paper slipped under the door. On it, scrawled in Ethan's handwriting, was a simple message. "Locks don't keep secrets safe." I felt the room spin. He was messing with me, letting me know that no matter what I did, no matter how hard I tried to shut him out, he was still in control. A moment of defiance. At breakfast, I slammed my coffee cup onto the table, glaring at him. "This ends now!" My voice was shaking, but I didn't care. "I don't care what you think you have on me," I am done playing your games. David looked up from his newspaper, confused. What's going on? Ethan smiled. Nothing, Dad. His voice was so calm, so innocent, it made me sick. She's just in a bad mood today. I could feel my heart racing. He was gaslighting me, right in front of my husband, making me seem irrational. And David? He believed him. Maybe you just need some rest, honey, David said, squeezing my hand. I wanted to scream. Ethan winked at me from across the table. I had nowhere to run. The escape plan. That afternoon, I made a decision. I couldn't keep living like this. If I stayed silent, Ethan would keep pushing, keep breaking me down piece by piece. So I packed a small bag. I would leave for a few days, tell David I needed to visit a friend, just get out of the house, clear my mind, figure out what to do next. But as I was about to step outside, my phone buzzed. It was a message from Ethan. Where do you think you're going? I felt my breath catch. I turned around slowly, scanning the room. He was watching me. Right now, I typed a reply, my fingers shaking. Leave me alone, Ethan. The response came instantly. That's not how this works. I gripped my phone, panic rising in my chest. I swear if you don't stop. Or what? Ethan's reply was almost mocking. You'll tell Dad? I stared at the words, my body trembling. I could feel him smiling. He knew I wouldn't tell. And the terrifying part? I wasn't even sure why anymore. Was it because I was scared of what he might do? Or was it because deep down I knew it was already too late? I was trapped. Not just in my own home, but in a twisted nightmare I never saw coming. Ethan had taken everything from me, my peace, my sanity, my control. And the worst part? I let him. The breaking point. That night I barely slept. I lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening for footsteps outside my door, listening for him. I knew Ethan was waiting, watching, waiting for me to make the wrong move, waiting for me to run. But I wasn't going to run anymore. Confrontation. The next morning, I walked into the kitchen, my hands steady for the first time in weeks. Ethan was there, sipping his coffee like he owned the world. He looked up at me, smirking. Morning, Mom. I sat down across from him, my heart pounding, but my face calm. It's over, Ethan. His smirk faltered, just for a second. What's over? This game. I leaned forward. You think you have control over me, but you don't. Not anymore. Ethan's expression hardened. You sure about that? I smiled, the first real smile in weeks, because I finally figured something out. I let the silence stretch, watching the tension creep into his posture, the way his fingers tightened around his coffee mug. You don't actually have anything on me, do you? He blinked. For the first time, he looked uncertain. I pressed harder. If you did, you would have used it already. But you didn't, because you were bluffing this whole time. Ethan's jaw clenched. He knew I was right. All this time I had been scared of shadows. Ethan had been playing a mind game, making me believe he held unimaginable power over me. But the truth? He had nothing. And he knew it now, too. His last move. Ethan leaned back, his smirk returning, forced this time. Even if I don't have proof, do you really think Dad will believe you over me? I exhaled slowly. I don't have to prove anything. I tilted my head. But you do. He narrowed his eyes. And if I tell him anyway? Then you'd have to explain why you've been blackmailing me, stalking me, and taking photos of me in secret. I smiled sweetly. Think Dad would like hearing that. Ethan's face darkened for the first time. I saw fear in his eyes. Freedom. Ethan never spoke about it again. The next morning, He avoided my gaze. That cocky confidence, gone. I could feel it, the shift in power. The game was over, and I had won. The final goodbye. 2 weeks later, Ethan packed his bags. "I think it's time I moved out," he told David over dinner. David was shocked, but I wasn't. Ethan wasn't running away. He was escaping because he knew that as long as I was here, he couldn't control me anymore. And he hated that. The truth that set me free. The night Ethan left, I sat alone in the living room, staring at the empty hallway. I thought I would feel scared. That he would find a way to come back. That he wasn't really gone. But instead, I felt free. Because Ethan never had power over me. I had given it to him. And when I took it back, he had nothing left. The end.